Keith, it's a new year.
Yeah.
And there is a very high statistical probability that we will still, despite all of our promises to the contrary, release our episodes 2 days late.
We're going to lose. What's up and Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today we are talking about Season 6, Episode 9, Statistical Probabilities. There's a probability we're going to have fun. Mike, how you doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Keith. Hope everyone out there, whether you celebrate or you just tolerate the holiday season, the New Year season, that you maybe had a few moments to just sit and appreciate the nice things in life. Your freedom, if you have it. And
for now. Yeah,
all of the things. I'm sorry to anybody affected by the swath of tragedies that took place across the world. But we have a safe space we've carved out here, and we hope that you're joining us. And I'll tell you, last night, I've been a little under the weather. And CEO Jen is leaving for a few months. And so I've been trying to spend all my time with her. And so even carving out the hour to watch this, I was a little ho-hummy about it, Keith. But I have to tell you, the second I put a little blankie around me.
Yeah.
I hit play, and it was like coming back to hang out with a bunch of old friends. And that's
Just feels like home, right?
Yeah, it's such a crazy, weird feeling because these people, they don't know me. They don't care about me. But they were here for me. And so I'm excited to now share with our family my thoughts on the episode.
Well, first off, Garrick knows you.
That's true. He doesn't appear, although he probably should in this episode.
It does feel like he would be, well, I mean, that applies to literally every episode of the entire series.
Yeah.
So I've been looking forward to this. This is such an interesting episode because I've always really enjoyed it, and it's interesting to watch it again a little bit later in life, a little bit further. It's I don't know. I'm excited to talk about it.
I'm going to keep this vague because we'll talk about it a lot, I think, over the next 2 hours or so. I have to not judge this episode on what I want it to be retroactively. I have to judge it at its face, which is different, right? Because in the first 10 minutes of this episode, I'm like, oh my God, the parallels between this and now, it's going to have something to say about some things we've talked about recently, all kinds of stuff, but it really isn't that. And I can't... Last night I went to bed kind of judging it negatively because it's not what I hoped it would be, but I don't think it's what I want it to be.
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, and we're going to get into it. I will point out, this came out in 1999. All the things we want it to be about were not part of our consciousness at this point.
Absolutely true. You're right.
They had no idea it even existed at this point, so it's kind of hard to unless you had a time machine to go back. But I think we can...
Let's begin. This is... Yeah. Neurodiversity was either normal or Rain Man.
That's right. Yeah, that
was it.
100%.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, obviously my understanding of this episode is completely different after my own understanding of myself.
It almost accidentally says the right thing, but then doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was like I've watched it up until this year as them. And now I'm watching it as us, which is a completely different experience.
Yeah, right. Are you Bashir or are you O'Brien? Right, depending.
Yeah, turns out I'm 100% Bashir, and I didn't know. I thought I was O'Brien. Turns out I'm Bashir. Who knows? Without the superpowers. With none of the superpowers. All right. We cannot get into it yet.
No.
We have so much to do, including last week's viewer rate of Resurrection from the patrons. If you would like to join them, you can go to patreon.com/KandM. Join the Patreon at any level. And that means I read your comments. However, if your YouTube name is different from your Patreon name, let me know on the Patreon, because otherwise I might not be reading your comment. But you're a patron. I don't know all the secret code words.
I wish I knew off the top of my head, because I don't. I'm very drugged up right now. So I'll say that I don't even know what I have. I think it's a sinus infection. It wants to be. You know when you're like on the first verge of sick and you're like, this could be a variety of things. Anyway,
oh yeah. Well,
anyway, somebody wrote us in the past few days and was like, I thought I was a patron, but it turns out I'm not. So thank you for that person who I think became a patron. Yes, I think just became a patron as well. So thank you.
Oh, okay, cool. I hope I clocked it because I'm not great at that either.
Yeah.
And I'm not sick anymore. I was. You guys heard me coughing so much. I'm so sorry. All right. So here is what you had to say about last week's episode, Resurrection. Joshua Cronin, always the optimist, always the one to see the sunnier side of an episode that maybe we didn't see quite such a sunny side on, says, so I know I'm on the other side of this than you guys. I liked the character Burial. I liked his relationship with Kira in seasons 2 and 3. I knew last week when you guys watched this, you wouldn't like it. I don't mind it, probably my least favorite Mirror episode, but still has some cool stuff for me. I like it's the only Mirror episode that comes to our side versus us going to their side. And I'm never let down by seeing Kira in a black intendant outfit. I don't think any of us are. I'm gonna go with 71 self-sealing stem bolts. Oh, and hey, my boyfriend that always listens in the background every week and sings along to your jingles joined the Patreon, Teddy Bear. Welcome, Teddy Bear. I can't believe we're spreading inside your house.
Yeah, like a fungal disease.
100%. So,
as you're now, I believe the first official couple that is on the Patreon. We need a celebrity couple name for you, and rather than give it, since you both are paying patrons, I will allow you to tell us your Deep Space Nine couples Patreon celebrity name, and we will use it henceforth.
I like it. So yeah, we're spreading in your home. So you either need like Clorox, or just have everybody sign up. That's how this works. So Brian from Video Game Drive-By says, hey guys, first off, my state banned Pornhub over a year ago, but all my other YouTube viewings are long-form discussions on ridiculous video game lore. Yeah, I think the ban is moving across the country. So, what?
It's all right. I was refreshing you because you were lag.
I was like, oh, did I get banned too? I mean, I 100%. I'm gonna rot your brain way worse than Pornhub. But so I have good news for all of those who've lost access to that. On the internet, I think there are at least 2 or 3 sites that do a similar thing. So
I wouldn't know. I've heard.
I mean, I've heard. I heard people talking about it at school, at the cafeteria. So, all right. So Kailana Duckmar says, "Ha! I should buy you guys the famous Hunk Burial action figure doll. His mighty Thor chest all air and heaving, hilarious toy. I believe I have it. It's the playmat.
Keith, are you by any chance going through a VPN right now?
No, I turned it off.
Your audio's beeping and buzzing, and you're laggy. It's all bad.
Oh, okay. Well,
we'll get through it. We'll get through it. I was just checking. We'll make it work.
Oh no. Well, we can't. I mean, we have a reputation of having such a perfect product. We cannot go and put out a substandard product. Yeah, I don't have a VPN on. I don't have. I'm sending you everything.
Okay, great. This is great. Don't worry about it. I'm
sorry. Are you sure?
Yeah.
We could cut.
We're not cutting.
We're not cutting?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, folks, if my audio and video quality is terrible and it really ruins your experience, it's Mike's fault.
Keith, I'm trying no hat for the new year. That's like my new thing for January.
I like it. You look both old and surprised.
Damn, I wish that wasn't as funny as it was. That was good. Well done, sir.
Carolina Duckmar continues. Ira, in most answers by Ira about this was the only close-up Kira's known heart love for Burial, and the fans wanted to see him so they could move on. So this was to close up that story.
Yeah, about that.
So we could move forward, which I think is fine. I mean, to be fair, killing him felt like it closed up the chapter too.
Yeah.
But now we're like extra closed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Kevin Miles says, last week we had the wedding. This week we had the morning after hangover. Everything hurts and is blurry-eyed. The only thing that sobers you up is Kira. You can never have too much Kira. Agreed on all accounts. 75 self-sealing stem bolts. Happy holidays, my friends in the K&M family. Yes. Hope everybody had a great time. Or at least a tolerable time.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Hey, poor Mikey Johnson just had 2 people vote other. Are we going to get a second ballot? We'll see. All right.
Is that happening now?
Yeah. Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to keep you updated.
All right, great.
For everyone's watching this later when this is already done, or maybe not done. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, so Hibernation Pod, boy, calls me out.
Ooh.
So I was reading a comment, and somebody used the acronym SOA. Now, my autistic brain sees that frequently on Sons of Anarchy posters, they use SOA as their short. And it didn't make any sense to me, but I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to try to fix
You're
what
here
I
to
don't
Anchorman.
understand. I am 100% Anchorman. You put it down, I'm going to read it. I don't have to understand it. Of course, referring to Sacrifice of Angels. You know, the famous Deep
Did you
Space
say
Nine
Sons
show.
of Anarchy? That's what you said?
I said Sons of Anarchy. SOA, that's their... I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty dumb.
Thank you, Hibernation Pod. I am indeed an idiot. Mysterious Anne says, the noise Barile makes about climbing the ladder cracks me up every time. Yeah. I made a noise getting into the car the other day, and I'm like, that was unironic, but like the old man noise was just peak. Like my old man noise, my unplanned noise just flew across the grocery store parking lot.
I walked the dog yesterday morning, and I've been pushing her a little further and further, and by her I mean me, as I'm trying to like work myself up to physical exercise. And so there's a corner, and we were going up the hill, right? And about halfway through the hill, I started to slow down because it's pretty steep. And she kept getting ahead and ahead and ahead, and finally had to sit down, look at me, and go like this. And I thought to myself, damn. Oh, man, that's bad. That's when you know old has hit hard.
Wow.
The dog was like, this old son of a bee.
See, this is why Pretzel is a better dog for you.
Yeah. I need a pretzel.
Anyway, Mysterious Anne continues, I don't skip this one, but it's not my 70 self-sealing stem bolts.
See, what's happening, Keith, is when your audio cuts, you're not hearing it, but it goes, brrr. It sounds like you're cursing. So it just sounded like it sounded as if you were quoting a Mysterious Anne who was dropping the F-bomb, which I'm guessing she doesn't do often.
So YouTube viewer says, I agree with Mike's groan. The Mirror Universe as a one-off episode, or even a one-off with a later callback, but in my opinion, it was lazy writing to make 5 episodes involving the Mirror Universe. The Mirror Universe doesn't stand up to scrutiny, at least in Deep Space Nine. This would have been a better next-gen episode than Deep Space Nine. DS9 is built on its continuity, but the Mirror Universe is hardly ever mentioned in every episode, and it really has no impact on the Dominion War, and it should impact the Dominion War. Think of what you could do militarily if you hide soldiers and ships across dimensions. It makes no sense that the scientific-minded Federation has not tried to utilize the Mirror Universe. It makes no sense that the Dominion's control freaks haven't tried to use the Mirror Universe. It makes no sense that the sneaky Romulans haven't tried to utilize the Mirror Universe. Basically, everyone would want a piece of it and travel between dimensions, and would realistically be a bigger MacGuffin than the whole Bajoran wormhole. That said, the premise of the Mirror Universe Episode 4 is poorly thought out, but the episode has decent pacing, good acting. Pacing. I was like, I want Southern. It's got decent pacing, good acting, and gave Quark a chance
Not
to
only
shine.
am I a great quarterback, and not only am I debating Manning, but I'm also pacing Manning.
Pacing Manning. 65 out of 100 self-sealing stem bolts. The next episode will be magnificent. Hopefully I can finagle. We're watching it live stream if there is one. I don't think there was.
No.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, I think that's all fair. I think the mirror episodes are supposed to be, let's do something fun and don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think it's a way to cover the sand, you know, so there's nothing written in it. But I will say, I will put a pin in for like a book, a whole arc where people are using the mirror universe to smuggle in troops around the back is fantastic.
I know there are comic book series that take place entirely in the mirror universe. And I have not read any of them, so I don't know the quality of them. But I imagine there's some interesting storytelling you can do in a comic book form. All right, so JD says, I love those Christmas plans, Mike. I wish I could join you. Congrats to Keith's dad. Best wishes for him, indeed.
For sure.
We're stupid and dirty and childish. We're like wholesome 12-year-olds. Keith, you know you need to finish this song. All right, so here's one. Keith, your nephew sounds like Ongo Gablogian. Let's see who actually gets that joke. Not me. But I read it, so I don't... I anchormanned it.
Maybe not got it, but you delivered it.
I delivered it. You put it on the screen, I will say the words. Hey, I am ordained, so if Brian can convince his fiance to go Klingon, I will be available.
I think Keith and I are both ordained, it turns out. So if you don't want to invite us to, if you can only invite one of us to the wedding, loophole, one of us could marry you, the other could just be a guest.
That's true. I mean, I think between the two of us, we've done 3 weddings. Have you done more than one?
I've done 3.
We've done 5.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So there you go. My mom has been cooking all week, but no cookies, mostly pies and fudge and Buckeyes.
Not one cookie arrived at my house. Not a one.
Yeah. Well, I made cookies here. And
yeah. Did I not supply you my address? I guess I forgot.
You think I'm gonna mail you sugar cookies that come in the plastic tube from the grocery store?
Yeah. Yes, I do think that.
All right. Well, when you come here, I'll make you some plastic tube cookies. But I do ice them. I do decorate them nicely. Anyway, where are we? I'm so sorry, JD. I would kill my fiance if they proposed having our wedding catered by the Olive Garden.
All right,
you know, we have a mutual
I guess nobody
friend.
likes high quality, authentic Italian cuisine anymore.
We had a mutual friend who every year for his birthday would force all of his friends to go and have a birthday dinner at the Olive Garden in Times Square. Do you remember? Devin used to do that?
I was never invited to the Devon Olive Garden party, so no.
Well, lucky you, buddy. All right, so before we had to reboot, so I didn't get unnecessarily censored, because nobody wants me to be censored. JD was talking about cookies and such, and the Olive Garden, and that put us off in a 45-minute runner. He continues, I still know the manager at Barnes & Noble's. I'm totally going to tell her to make that sign say, you can't sell Judy Bloom after fecal plume. Brilliant. I hope anybody remembers that joke, but somebody make that sign. That should be a t-shirt. Mm-hmm. How is that not a t-shirt?
Well, it's soon going to be a t-shirt because one of my favorite t-shirts is a JD Makes original, which the Bazorps, if you recall. That's upstairs. And let me tell you, the Judy Bloom fecal plume, I would wear.
Yeah, it's just like have the door to the bathroom in Barnes and Noble's with a sign on it that says no, you can't buy Judy Bloom without fecal plume or something to that extent. I like it. Keith, did you just imply that In the Pale Moonlight was not very good? No. I phrased something ambiguously, but
you inferred that, but it was not implied.
There's no implications or any other aspersions on that episode. There will be no aspersions on that episode. Trust. So yeah, the non-reaction to Bareil beaming in, which is something that has happened before, an unknown beam in, and everyone reached for their phaser. But this time everyone was like, don't care. It annoys me so much. So, Mike, to partially deflate your wormhole, when moving between universes, they need a transporter pad, which they don't explain how Intendant Kira did this, but there's dozens of unsupervised transporters all over the station, so it's possible she got on that way, so he couldn't just beam into the temple. But if he had gotten the runabout, he probably could have used that to beam the orb out of the tempo, just a possible fix. I suspect that Keith has spent much of the last few days walking around saying, "Mirror Kira," over and over. Yeah, a little bit. Best AlamarEmmys cut ever. I don't know what that refers to because I don't watch. The character work for Kira is fine, but overall, this one is really weak. It's 69 self-sealing stem bolts for me. Alan T. Girton says, there have been highs in 2024. There have been lows. You've made it this far. Be glad. You've survived. Tomorrow you can start again. I wish the best for you. While I personally don't like the way Kira falls so quickly for this man, I can understand how her emotions can cloud how she sees Belial. Of course, I always enjoy a bit of Mirror Kira. Not a favorite episode, garnering 68 self-sealing stem bolts. For those celebrating, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and all. The small amount of Jewish ancestry that I have, they just slap me. All right, let us.
Do you know I went to my first Hanukkah candle lighting this year? The first time in my whole life.
Really?
Yeah.
This year?
Yeah.
Oh, we did it back in like preschool. We did that. Anyway, it's very nice.
Hey Keith, do you have a fan on behind you?
Oh my God! How many more complaints do you have? The heat's on.
Okay.
Jesus.
My OCD is raging right now.
I could. You think?
What else we got? What else we got?
Is your heart beating? Because I feel like.
Are you sweating? I can almost feel the secretion.
Is there like blood rushing through your veins at all?
Do you have to pump so loud?
Are you breathing?
What else we got?
Great. That's it for the hails from the patrons.
That's it? Because it felt like 3 days.
Well, it's because that wasn't the patrons' fault. That was our fault.
It was.
Let's talk about Statistical Probabilities, which aired right around Thanksgiving on November 24th, 1997. The top song, you know what? That candle, really resilient. Didn't matter how much wind, it's still burning.
Like a candle in the wind, you can gently hear it rustling like Keith's hair follicles. I can hear it through the internet, and it's pretty nice. In fact, I probably could find it in the top 10 Pornhub searches. Keith's hair follicles. Podcasters talking about cookies is in the top 10. The candle burned out long before Mike's rant ever ended.
I think Hanukkah would like to unsubscribe from Mike. All candles have been removed from Mike. The top movie, you ready for this?
I am.
Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Wait, there had already been the regular Mortal Kombat movie?
I guess so.
Oof.
Here we are in 1997. Who would have thought? Mike, what was on TV tonight?
Well, keep. There was a huge competition taking place, and I'm not talking about Monday Night Football, in which your Denver Broncos defeated the then Oakland Raiders 31-3. I'm talking about ABC in primetime airing Champions of Magic. But at the very same time, Keith, Fox was airing Breaking the Magician's Code. Magic's biggest secrets finally revealed. Remember they had the masked magician who was telling breaking
what an interesting FU that's like Monday Night Wars right there.
Very Fox. That feels very
Fox to like try to undermine your magical opponent.
Yeah, I mean, our cup runneth over as far as specials of magic on television.
I mean, very 90s.
Yeah, the magic of I guess heaven was being displayed on the WB with the new episode of Seventh Heaven, Truth or Dare. And of course, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was firing away on all cylinders. We had Melrose Place, we had Everybody Loves Raymond and its primetime run, Murphy Brown, George and Leo, Brooklyn South. All kinds of great stuff happening on TV back in 1997.
All right. What was Voyager doing this week? The episode concerning flight. Uh-oh. Leonardo. He's in trouble. And I don't mean the Ninja Turtle. I mean the actual Leonardo. You'll understand that in a little bit.
We're going to do time traveling? Is this like Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey?
Who knows? Who knows?
I guess we will. 5
We're
years from
going to find out in like 5 years. This episode was directed by Anson Williams, first of two, who is famous for those of us old enough to remember this. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them. He was Potsy on Happy Days.
You don't remember Potsy?
I've never seen an episode of Happy Days. Never once in my life.
Okay.
Because I'm 45. I'm not.
These days are new. I know. I was obsessed with 50s culture, so I don't know why. I like all things.
You're like a greaser.
Yeah, I liked the Fonz. I liked Ron Howard and his debut. Right.
Sure.
As Richie Cunningham. I liked the Cunningham family, and of course Potsy.
Okay. Well, there we are.
He
directed this episode.
Yeah, he was kind of a stooge, but.
Well, he directed this. This was written as a teleplay by Renee Echevarria and a story by Pam Pietroforte. There's, I believe, a submission because Pam has this and one other episode of Deep Space Nine that I believe she submitted a story for. I think we should submit some more trivia.
Waste your time.
We should just stop.
This is not good, guys. If you thought we were going to come back like rested and ready and on time,
we've had to reboot already. I've cut this episode from just mere table scraps.
This is not good.
No,
not good because it's going to like fragment on the hard drive or something. So,
and also I forgot to run the audio recording back up. So who knows if this episode even exists at this point.
Great. Well, imagine this.
I see the VU meters moving, so I think we're good.
Okay. All right. We'll see. All right. Trivia. The character of Jack is based upon Dean Moriarty, who was based on Neil Cassidy, one of the main characters of the 1951 Jack Kerouac novel On the Road, a wannabe philosopher who talks a mile a minute. Tim Ransom, who plays Jack, had previously auditioned to play Dr. Bashir on the show. I love it when they bring back people who had auditioned for stuff. Gives us all hope for the auditions we don't get.
Mm-hmm.
The waltz that is heard during the party is, of course, by Johann Strauss, and it is called By the Beautiful Blue Danube. Was composed in 1866, is one of the most popular and recognized pieces of classical music ever composed. It is also famously used in the establishing shot of the space station in 2001.
Also,
Odyssey.
Also known as In the Public Domain.
Yes. And in a transition that shows a young man going from a primitive species to one that is spacefaring, a thematically fitting reference. During the pre-production of this episode, there was a great deal of discussion as to where to set it, i.e. where to have the savants. The script specified that they were to be, but from a Bye.
That freak? Okay, we're still recording.
Weird.
Hi, everybody.
I'm so sorry.
The internet even's conspiring. They're like, no, it's not back from break yet, the internet.
No, well, come on, guys. We still have
7 hours.
19 days. We have 19 days before everything blows up. Come on, give us that. As I was saying, they originally put the savants in the wardroom. But from a practical point of view, shooting several scenes with 5 characters in such a relatively small location was not desirable. So it was agreed to move the scenes somewhere else. It was Steve Oster who suggested the cargo bay, because we thought we might be saying something about Starfleet's treatment of these people if we put them in the cargo bay, which is very interesting. And like if you pay attention to their living setup, you're like, I don't know how I feel about that. But I know what I feel about the great people on our Patreon.
Yeah, Keith, interestingly, I was distracted there because I was reading a comment from that just came in about the watch along, and you could join the watch along by becoming one of our patrons. Like these fine folks, even though the button is not working.
That's par.
Which is...
Guys, I hope, look, our pilot is always going to be a little rough. We're going to get a little better once we've done a couple of these.
Yeah, you're right. As we've always improved week to week, as we've proven. So Scotty B was the one writing in. You can see his name up on this slide, and you get your name up on this slide by becoming one of the few, the proud, the patrons. Like these fine folks. Brian Kimball-Biersick, Peter Benk, Frank Rinch, Quarks Bar, Yanba.
Benke.
I'm never going to say that right. You might think it's a bit, but it's not. Ryan Chesley, Andre.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Romulan shoulder pad enjoyer.
We've just unboxed these amazing toys he
Jamie
sent to
Lubin,
us.
Joshua Cronin, Andrew Hayes, Alan, and the Mysterious. Worf's Big Old Boot Chivs, Charles Babbage, John Kelly.
John Kelly, welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Everybody needs something to do in their retirement. And if you were a former chief of staff of Trump, you're always welcome here. Harry Pothead, Anton Thies, Carl Fisher.
Sure he's not tired of that joke.
Alan Girton, Deborah Scott, Teddy Bear. I'm sorry, Teddy Bear. I love you. I want to squeeze you. But that made me laugh. Chancellor Jen, Brian from Video Game Drive-By, CRM Productions, Nikolai Ivanovich Lobachevsky, YouTube viewer, James Hubbard, Hibernation Pod, Miri Holcomb, Oto's Bucket, Lost Emu, Scotty B, Barrett Neath, JD, Colin, Chris, Frank, Pat, Frank, Rinch, Peter Benke, Joshua Cronin, Kevin Miles, Engineer Maynard, Jerome A. Gibson, Zontar1, DC, Bolian for Soup, Lutz Kremer, Wyatt, Eldridge. Oh my god, there's so many names to read. It makes me so overjoyed. And of course, you can get onto the golden slide by just forgetting that you're subscribed and having that money continually go. Casey, Brian, Jason, Joshua, Ann, Andrew, Boot. Clark.
What?
Become one of these people.
Speaking of boot, can we reboot Mike? Can we unplug him and plug him back in?
I was just picking one random word in the title to read because we were running long, and then I just said boot. Guys, I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Boot, for all of your support. Arch support, financial support. Boot.
This episode brought to you by Boot.
I am Boot.
Oh, you guys.
I am Boot. I am Doot.
Guys,
wow.
I do love Star Trek. I'm sorry this episode's so off the rails, but we haven't done this in a while. I've forgotten how to do it. Oh man, that made me laugh. Oh my goodness.
Look, the holidays are a lot, folks. Holidays are a lot.
Listen, so you get all kinds of stuff. We usually do some movies here and there. We do other stuff. Jen's gonna be gone, so we're gonna be doing a lot of other stuff. And you get to watch me watch every episode of Deep Space Nine, good, bad, or ugly.
Yeah, well, there it is. Okay, our guest stars are Jeffrey Combs, back as Wei-Yun, Tim Ransom as Jack, Janetta Arnett as Karen, Hillary Shepard-Turner as Lauren, Michael Keenan as Patrick, Casey Biggs as Damar, and Faith C. Sally as Serena. I think, mercifully, let's go into our screening room, where at least we're smaller on your screen.
Ooh.
Mike, do we need to call an ambulance? Should we send? Should I be texting Jen?
Oh, she'd prefer you not to. Okay, here we are.
Jen likes it when I text.
As long as it's not about me. If the text just starts about general, she would love it. Yeah.
She doesn't need another person complaining about you. Yeah, fair enough. All right, so in our teaser, we begin in the aforementioned cargo bay, where 4 people we don't know have been set up with beds, but no walls or other furniture. Jack is a hyper-fast-talking complainer, Lauren is a sort of sex-obsessed femme fatale, and Patrick seems to be developmentally slow, and Serena does not speak. They're all genetically enhanced and on leave from an institution. And they're here to hang out with Dr. Bashir to try to figure out a better way to integrate into society. Jack is already resentful of Bashir for passing and living a normal life. Lauren is planning to seduce him, and Patrick just wants to go home. We meet their caretaker, and Jack intentionally breaks a pad and cuts the doctor's hand with it. It's actually pretty creepy. So what were you thinking here? Like, we're sort of dropped in media res in with these people, and we have to figure out what's going on without much explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. It was giving me strong Superman 2 vibes, where what's his name? Zod comes in with those other kind of like very stock other villains who were like, one was a dum-dum, one was a femme fatale. It just felt like that vibe of stock character. Luckily, we get a lot of context once Bashir walks in, and I kept thinking this was Liv Tyler.
That's true. Liv Tyler, yeah, she's a lot. Yeah, Liv Tyler was like 17 at this point. Yeah. No, that's not true, because hadn't Armageddon already come out by now?
Yeah, but she wasn't in Armageddon, was she?
Yeah, she was the female love interest. She's made out with Ben Affleck. So anyway, after cutting the doctor's hand, Jack says sorry, and she says, and I actually really love this line, says, "You're not sorry, Jack. We both know that. You did it on purpose because you're upset, but there are better ways of dealing with being upset."
Yeah, Liv Tyler was 20 years old at this point.
Yeah, see? Their doctor is keeping them in a cargo bay against their will, but at least she's not Nurse Ratched. The other parallel for this sequence here. She tells Bashir, "Hope you have better luck than I have," and leaves. Now, of course, I think it's a really interesting way to introduce Jack there by immediately hitting us with a level of danger.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
With him. Although it's never, well, I was going to say, it's not quite paid off in terms of like his malevolence, because he turns out to be tremendously dangerous, but not necessarily intentionally. It never
I think
comes
what it
from
shows
malevolence.
us, well, when he almost snaps the lady's neck.
Right. It's sort of.
I think it's showing us that he is very willing to resort to violence to prove a point and or get his way.
Right. But it's interesting that we use violence to do that, and then he turns out not to be malevolent.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the bait and switch here, I mean, you asked me what I thought. Early on, I thought that they were being a little heavy-handed with their threat, and I thought that where they were going to pull the rug was that they were going to be, like you said, benign and helpful. I think there's a little bit of a scapegoat at the end, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, like it's sort of a... We sort of do this with them, right? Ooh, they're dangerous. Oh, they're good. Oh, they're super dangerous. Oh, but they don't mean it. Which is an interesting story for them.
I also thought, maybe it's because I read Stephen King's The Institute, that the Institute part was going to be more important, but it turns out to just kind of be a secondary story to these specific folks in the Institute. So it's not, they're not in the Institute because they're genetically modified.
Right, which is actually an important clarification here.
That seems confusing, because at first I was slightly thinking maybe we were going down that they were in some sort of a camp, like a work camp scenario. There's so many. That is going to be, I think, the ultimate failing for me in this episode, is that there's so many potential interesting points that we don't ever really talk about, that are broached, you know what I mean, but never really explored. Anyway.
I'm sorry.
Cat.
Yes. I'm gonna suck it back in. So in Act 1, when Bashir enters, they've turned off the lights, and he introduces himself to the four of them. They each display the ways that make them unique. He explains how that he was also enhanced, and he shows off some math, and they accept him as one of them. And Bashir says, I did my best not to exploit my abilities, answering the question, how did you stay undercover? And Jack says, so no one would expect. Very clever, I'm impressed. That's not right. There were reasons why DNA resequencing is illegal. There are reasons why people like us are barred from serving in Starfleet. We have an advantage. Normal people can't compete. It's not fair. Bashir says, maybe you're right. Maybe I should have said something sooner. There are rules. Don't talk with an open mouthful. Don't open an airlock when someone's inside. Don't lie about your genetic status, but you did. You lied. Patrick thinks if he'd come out earlier, Bashir would be in the Institute with them. But Bashir reminds him and the audience that you don't get locked up for being enhanced, you're just prevented from doing certain jobs. And Jack says, no, they just won't let us do anything that's worth doing. They're afraid we're going to take over. Well, it happened before. People like us did try to take over. I knew it. I knew you were going to trot out the eugenics wars. I'm not trotting anything. I'm just saying that there's a reason we're barred from certain professions. That doesn't mean we can't be productive members of society. And Jack says, well, here it comes, though we have something to contribute. Speech. No, I will not forget what was done to me. I will not be part of a society that locked me away for being too smart. No. And it's... See, I love cracking open this world.
Yeah.
And starting to think about these things, again, with the context of like Wrath of Khan and the eugenics wars, but like, what do you do with these people, especially the ones who have obstacles that prevent them from integrating well into normal society, but Starfleet still trying, but also still treating them sort of second class. It's complex, and I think that's a very Deep Space Nine way to handle all of this.
Yeah, and also, it's very easy to subscribe to the line of thinking as to why Bashir was enhanced, right? He was enhanced to get ahead or to get an advantage, or whereas when you really play it out, and if you think, we could have explored the thread here that a lot of people, if they were able to, I don't know how expensive it was or what the kind of process was to get yourself enhanced, but folks with challenges I can easily see parents wanting to help address said challenges by perhaps genetic resequencing or whatnot, and it actually, you would imagine that was quite common, right?
Well, and I think there are at least the desire to do it would be quite common, and I think because you're sort of half of it is if you're behind, you want to catch them up because of the competition of the world, which is Bashir's story. I think part of what's inherent in these people's stories, I don't know, but I'm inferring that their parents or whomever did it for them maybe didn't have access to the high quality one and got the discount one, which is why it failed. It got the Groupon, which is why it had all these unintended side effects with all of these other.
We also don't know if
problems.
These side effects were because of this resequencing. Did they say that?
I think they do say that, or at least it's heavily implied.
Okay.
But yeah, so like, and that's where we get into the
RFK of it all.
The RFK of it all, and we're Starfleet. We talk a little bit about the opportunity inequality that they're trying to fix by preventing genetically enhanced folks from competing with non-genetically enhanced folks. But also, I think what you said, there might be an economic inequality for the people who choose to do that. They had to use the Groupon, so they did the discount, the more dangerous one. Like we might be dealing with our healthcare system.
Yeah, I guess I'll crack this open right here. It's impossible. It's happened before, but this episode really specifically to me made it clear that this experiment we're doing, it is impossible for me to watch these in a vacuum. It's impossible. Media is enjoyed, even classical music is enjoyed in the context of your current position, society, and everything, right? Like, I couldn't get out of my brain this early in the episode. Oh, this is before we even get to the neurodivergence of it all. I'm just thinking, I'm still back to the, should trans athletes be able to perform, be able to compete, that kind of amongst their quote unquote, their peers, right? And that sort of just whole issue. That's all. It just dominated my my central cortex. I just,
well, it's interesting that you made that parallel, and I made the parallel of the Dreamers.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
And like they are being punished for a decision that their parents made, utterly out of their control.
And so, and with that in my brain, I was like, what points are they going to raise, unbeknownst to the impact it will have 20 years from now when it airs, right? And and then quickly it shifts to the neurodivergence of it all, and I think that's almost forced upon it because of the choice they made to make them sort of stock neurodivergent characters.
Which I think they successfully did without even knowing it, without doing it on purpose, without even knowing that that's what they were. Because just because we're all being diagnosed today doesn't mean that we haven't existed since the beginning of time. And so everyone talks about, the great autism spike. What's causing it? Us understanding what it is. And so therefore we're diagnosing it accurately. There aren't like more of us.
I'm curious, and we can talk about this now or later, as to why they chose to make them to highlight that otherness of them. What would have had them being just like a cadre of, okay, I guess that's why they're in this institute, right? Like they needed a MacGuffin to get them all together.
Well, I think they're trying to make they're trying to tell the story of, Bashir is the example of what goes right when you do this, but they're the example of what goes wrong, and then when it goes wrong, what do you do? And like how, because a lot of this is like, how can they integrate back into society? Can they integrate back into society? They have these extraordinary abilities. Can we use them? Should we use them morally? Should we use them practically? And like, can we trust them in all of these different ways? I think it just cracks open a very interesting discussion, which is why I think that's what the episode's about.
I don't know. I think what the episode becomes about is zero-sum thinking, really. That's the thing, is that what you just pitched to me is interesting, but they don't really discuss them. In this brief opening, they do, but the rest of the episode isn't about that at all.
Yeah, I mean, it then becomes about math versus fate versus whether or not we have control over our own destinies, or whether it's like my brother, who is a genius scientist, believes that all fate is already determined, all history is already written because it's all just a mathematical equation.
Which actually, I guess it's not a bad idea. No, I'll wait till we get there.
All right, we're gonna go pretty deep with this, so let's get the story going. So later, Bashir discusses the situation after dinner with the main cast. The four of them are in the institute due to unexpected side effects of genetic enhancements. They said it. They're here to see if Bashir can teach them how to live live on their own and live normal lives. They discuss the morality of letting enhanced people compete with the normos. And Bashir says giving them a chance to contribute doesn't mean sanctioning what was done to them. They didn't ask to have their DNA tampered with. They were just children when it happened. Why should they be excluded when their parents are the ones who broke the law? Sisko says, "You're right, it's not quite fair. But even so, it seemed a good way to discourage genetic tampering." And I said, here, replace genetic modifications with crossing the border, and you're talking about the Dreamers. And that is full on the discussion there. It gets tense as Worf, of course, is kind of racist against genetically modified, including calling Bashir an exception. "You're one of the good ones, Bashir," wink. Sisko changes the subject.
I mean, it is the dream, or immigration, right? Or deportation. Well, you got to get all of the illegals out, Keith, but not not Jose. He works with me. He's a good guy.
Right.
Well, it's like, oh, he's the exception. Like all those points in this, I think this conversation is probably the most successful distillation of the modern context of the episode. I think it chooses to tell a different story as we go further, but this conversation I do appreciate.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy. It's very easy to just to scoff and be like, this is terrible. I agree, it is terrible. But when you get to the point of the conversation where it's like, well, what are solutions? Right? So how should we handle it? It is complex and it is difficult. And I think that complexity is something Deep Space Nine, the thing I like about the show is that it lets us sit in that, right? It doesn't necessarily force an answer down your throat or invent one. Oh, well, it's a perfect society, so everything's good in space.
Well, and the answer is, much like the immigration system, it is neither, the real answer is neither binary choice.
Right.
It's going to have to be a complex system. And
that will be imperfect.
It's going to be imperfect inherently because the situation is imperfect. Anyway, so Cisco changes the subject and tells us that Damar is now in charge of the Cardassian Empire, and he's going to give a public speech because we remember Dukat he went all crazy for Cuckoo Puffs, and they're interrupted by Jack, who has hacked the comm system to complain about a noise in their room. Nobody can hear it except for them and Bashir. Hypersensitivity to light and sound, Mike, is a neurodivergent tendency. Also an interesting parallel here. Luckily, my heating is off. So
I've noticed because the noise gate is no longer bothering me.
Yeah, well. But again, I don't know how much they were clocking. I mean, somebody on this writing staff had to be aware of this, at least instinctually, if not medically.
Keith, you know what a great way to save a buck is?
What's that?
Write a mute character.
Interesting you say that. We'll talk more about it. So, Jack threatens to kill Serena if they don't fix the noise. Sort of the same beat as bloodying his doctor, but also reinforcing possible danger here. Odd. An odd beat, and I don't think they needed it. But it feels like, we're gonna go to commercial, we gotta have something. But it's false danger, it's false everything, and I'm not
and
sure
also,
what the point
I
of it
think, I guess you could probably explain it away, but I think it neuters her character a little bit, because one of the big things is they're going to use as her affection for him, but
right,
him then trying to kill, it's all weird.
I think it's probably
muddy.
The weakest beat in the episode for me. So in Act 2, he immediately lets her go when O'Brien comes to fix the noise. He finds it, and Patrick knows exactly what's wrong just by sound.
Although I'd like to try to fix this wormhole for me.
Please, fix the wormhole.
Perhaps. In mirroring the end beat where his bluff gets called, basically, right? They get captured because he didn't even, for all his projection, he didn't figure out her being right under his nose and being the one to root them out. Perhaps Bashir is displaying his emotional intelligence here, just like they display his kind of enhanced emotional intelligence, because throughout this entire beat, Bashir shows zero trepidation and zero belief that this guy's actually going to hurt her.
Yeah, no, I think Bashir knows that it's a bluff.
So, I don't know what I'm trying to do, but
well, I mean, I
think the threat level jumping here doesn't really jump because it doesn't feel like he's actually going to follow through.
No,
but I don't know what they're trying to say with it. I would agree with you there.
Well, here's what I think they're trying to say. I think they're trying to say, and this is also a struggle for us neurodivergents, his desperation to be heard and his desperation to be understood has reached the point where he feels like no one is going to listen unless I'm screaming.
Yeah.
And there is some evidence for that. There's a lot of dismissal of what he's saying. He's saying 10,000 things a second, and everybody's like, yeah. and ignoring all the things that he's saying. They're just, in what I've read already, there's probably 30 things that he says that nobody even acknowledges that he said it.
Mm-hmm.
So he reaches the point of
because they can't hear
desperation.
anything but that pen clicking. I mean, the high pitched noise.
Oh, poor Mike. Here, I'll switch to my other autistic stem.
Yeah.
And that is playing with my self-sealing stem bolt.
Yeah. I've
Hate
got
that word.
16 fidgets over here, so I get it.
Okay, great. I'll switch to a silent fidget for
Keith and
poor
I are
Mike.
basically just redoing this episode as a podcast right now.
It's just us.
Yeah.
This episode is just about us. Mike, don't threaten to kill the cat. I promise
No.
I'll put the pen down.
I couldn't possibly. Just my
No. So then they watch Damar's speech. And the speech is typical blustery, rah-rah, sort of a dystopian thing. But Jack, Lauren, and Patrick immediately pick up that he's not telling the truth. They can tell Damar is ashamed of something, sleepless, and that he killed someone close to him. Of course, Zial. They know he's a pretender, and that somebody is making him say all of this. And they translate all of this through the lens of Shakespeare. But they're right. It is interesting that how prescient Shakespeare's storytelling and character work is in times of fascism. Right? Because so much of his work, of his dramas at least, are sort of about fascist societies and power disputes and trying to control blah, 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 blah. And they immediately pick it up here. Who's really pulling the reins? How's the Mad King, the whatever it is, which it's interesting. So Bashir later tells Kira and Dax how much they were able to figure out just by watching the speech. Bashir thinks this could be a way to make them feel useful by learning about Cardassia. Cisco comes in and says that Damar and Weyoun are coming for peace negotiations tomorrow. Did I write peach in the rundown, not peace? Yeah. Sure did.
Hell yeah.
But I said peace, even though it said, I'm not quite full Anchorman.
Get this man a tube sugar cookie.
Damar and Weyoun are coming for peach negotiations tomorrow. And they're planning to do it publicly so everyone can watch, including our genetically enhanced new friends. So both convenient for the storytelling, but also
saves on sets.
Saves on sets, saves on all of that, but I think also something that they would do. Mm-hmm. Because so much of this is political posturing and trying to seem like whatever. So in Act 3, Damar and Weyoun return to the station and greet Kira. And we cut to the negotiations. They're trying to set a new border after the fighting. We see that they're actually watching a holodeck recreation of the meeting with Patrick walking through. They're trying to do what the Dominion is going to try to do, what Trump is going to do in Ukraine. Just set the border at whatever the lines are right this moment, regardless of historical precedent or who's right or who's wrong. And after switching to native language mode and hearing Weyoun speak in his own tongue, they can tell that he is lying. They are already fluent in Vorta, or Dominionese, as Bashir calls it. Ugh, Dominionese, a stupid word. Patrick also figures out that what they want is the Cabral system. They kept avoiding it with their eyes on the map, which is why he knew that's what they wanted. Bashir ends the program, and we see that they've set up holoprojectors in the cargo bay where they are. Of course, the tech of all this, I immediately wanted to know more about. I bet it's fairly easy to set up visual projections for them. But to have force and matter, right, they need to have a more complex system like the holodeck or what Quark set up. So which would be awesome, because like if you're just projecting the image, you don't need to touch it. Like everyone could have one of those. I don't know why you wouldn't. But I think we also learned a little bit more about the Universal Translator. And
I'm trying to remember, there's a video game of recent years, kind of a walking adventure game, that was this concept played out through a whole game. You visit this, I can't remember the name of it. I should tell you because you should play it. It's very much you're walking through this derelict space station trying to figure out why the whole crew got killed, what happened. But
it's like Dead Space or something like that?
No, but the MacGuffin are these things that project a hologram of what happened. And you can get different pieces of it and watch it and then rotate the projection 3D in 3D and find little hints. And it's basically this exactly what they're doing video game. I loved it. I can't remember what it's called, but...
Yeah, they do that in Prometheus a little bit. Yeah, it's a
cool sci-fi
idea.
thing, yeah.
Cool sci-fi thing. And cool tech. I want one of those for my basement here.
I also love that in this episode, the shorthand for learning stuff is look at pad.
Look at pad. I mean, that's...
Lots of pads in this episode.
I mean, I got a lot of screens.
That's
Same
fair.
difference.
Fair.
But it is also cool to see in that playback, we can choose languages that we hear in subtitles, and it's sort of like they switched it to the way I watch Squid Game. I want to hear it in actual Korean and read the subtitles because
you want to hear the performance in that.
Watching something overdubbed, you just don't get the performance at all. And they're giving these spectacular performances. I need to hear their actual voices. I never listen to the voiceovers.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's exactly what's happening here. They're like, I can tell you're lying in your own language and not the voiceover. So Jack says, yes. The typical Dominion strategy. They offer to give up something valuable to hide the fact that they want something even more valuable in the long term. That's how they think, the big picture. They don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. Off their, is what they wrote in the script. They're thinking about what's going to happen a year from now, a decade, a century. Oh boy, if this country could think like that, we'd be in a much better place. They try to figure out how the system could be of use. Then Serena writes something on the pad. The system that they're trying to hold on to has the materials they need to manufacture Ketracel White on this side of the wormhole. So that's kind of a big deal. And Cisco says, okay, we can't give this up. Then Bashir says, but we should. If we don't, the Dominion will have no choice but to launch a full-scale attack before its stockpile of White runs out. Here are the casualty projections. As you can see, an attack would be devastating for both sides. And Cisco says, you're suggesting we stall. It'll buy us time to rebuild defenses. It'll give us a chance to bring the Romulans into the Alliance. The Romulans. According to our analysis, they'll vote to abandon their non-aggression pact with the Dominion at next year's plenary session. Interesting strategy here. Because we can't let them get Ketracel White, but we don't want to do the attack yet. So stall. Smart. And obviously, getting the Romulans involved would be huge. So our enhanced folks have created specific projections of the war years in advance. Cisco has agreed to take their analysis to Starfleet Command. They're delighted to be making a difference. They all celebrate with party hats and waltzing. But I actually wanted to go back a little bit because they said something I didn't write down. But I think a lot of foreign policy, quote-unquote, experts think this way. And what they said was that the projections get more accurate the further out you are, and less dictated by the fluctuations of this, that, the other thing. And there are a lot of these foreign policy experts on TikTok or whatever who are very strident in their explanations of what is 100% going to happen in China, in Russia, based on birth rates and minerals and whatever, access to whatever. And there's 100%, China is 100% going to fall within 5 years because of the birth rate issue or whatever. I think is very much thinking like this, right? That yes, you can have some political party take over, they negotiate this deal, they don't negotiate this deal, this guy does it. Well, all of that will change things marginally in the short term, but in the long run, they have an unsustainable birth rate, so they are guaranteed to fall. And I think that is the type of thinking we see from some of these folks. And it's very compelling, and it makes sense on the face, but I wonder how often it actually bears out, which is kind of the question of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, it starts to get a little muddy here as far as like making their ultimate point later, right? In that they choose to highlight first on their intellectual Sherlocking, right?
Right.
Emotional Sherlocking. Like where they're able to read subtle emotional or physical tells that give insight into their thought process, which then you can extrapolate into policy. But they sort of end up making a sort of mathematical argument, right? At the end, like the summation of the episode is very math, right? So it muddies it here for me. I guess it's their ability to computate long term, extrapolate computation long term.
I actually don't think it does, because the way that they're reading the emotional tics and the lies are also math, just a different flavor. So the reason they could tell that they wanted the Cabral system was they're not looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's not necessarily emotional. That's like, I know mathematically, if you don't look at something, it has a special meaning to you.
Yes.
Or whatever. It's like,
however,
it's using mathematical equations to lie detect.
Okay, but they are presenting them, and we are to take, because the whole dilemma, the whole sort of should they, shouldn't they, present it to Cisco, then present it to Starfleet, is based on what is communicated to us as mathematical certainty. Whereas if all along the way the certain blocks that build that projection is based on these subtle physical cues and whatnot, none of those are certainties. None of those are.
Well, I bet it's built on all of those things at once. Right, I forget the name of the guy.
I mean, there are people that do this now. I had a girlfriend whose father, ex-military, started to work for the TSA and would, unarmed, just walk airports and based on people's body language, flag them. You know what I mean? That already exists. And even if you could do that to a superhuman level, there's still room for error.
Well, I think and again, I'm extrapolating myself. I think the math that they are doing incorporates that, but it also incorporates stuff like resources, right? So a lot of these foreign policies, it's like minerals and birth rates, right? That are just sort of mathematical, like, okay, so China does not have access to this resource. In order to get that resource, it must get it from this one place. If that one place doesn't give it to them, they won't be able to create this. If they can't create this, their economy will collapse, or it's a birth rate thing, or it's whatever. And so it's like, yes, we can tell the leader's lying about that, and there are just sort of these like resource inevitabilities that like they're going to have to go to war to get that resource no matter what.
Now, even though it's a little confusing to me, or a little not ironclad, what I do think is interesting here, because of the confidence with which they present these things and which it is brought to Cisco and even Starfleet's impressed, you do buy in instantly to believing that they are infallible, that these are right? Like as a viewer, I'm like, okay, that's what we're saying here, is we believe it. Without leaving the room for none of the things that they've projected or have they done in the past have any certainties come true. It's just there's a bit of narcissism we allow them that I think he reckons with later because of their confidence.
Of course, and there is a I mean the China thing. Somebody, whatever the guys, he was like, look, their entire economy is based on their workforce that is X size. They're all about to retire, and their birth rate is so far behind, their workforce is going to be 30% of their population, and 70% of it is going to need to be supported. Their economy, by definition, has to be toast. And like, okay, the math of that, I can't argue with. Assuming those statistics are correct, I see why you're saying that with certainty, but you're also predicting this monumental geopolitical thing that's not happening yet. and you're just basing it on math. And I totally see how these guys think, and I see how Bashir believed him. But also, like, I don't know. Who knows? We don't know.
Yeah, this whole episode, I'm going to just distill real quick. Physics is where I come to, right? Theoretical physics is where I come to on this sort of what I think ultimately we're saying in this episode, right? You know, science, we often shout the scientific method, the scientific method, the scientific method. It's factual based, and we can get rid of all the BS assumption, right? But when you get to theoretical physics, and when you're doing math, right? High level, rock solid math, yet there are unknown variables that cannot be solved for, right? So there has to be implied assumption. And that in its own right, that's why there's these huge, sects of different opinions on various things. The Big Bang, particle physics, string theory, things, giant teams that say no, yes, right? Because ultimately, there are unknown variables. We cannot scientific method it as much as you want. There is a bit of it is imperfect math.
Well, but the scientific method is. It doesn't say it is this. Scientific method said our best understanding at this point with the data that we have is this is what it's most likely to be.
Right. But based on that, if you had to say, is it worth 9 billion people dying? Do you take that leap? Right. I think that's the question, right?
I would want to dig in a little further. Let's just say it that way. So
yeah, but what if sexy lady told you?
It's an attractive person can make you do lots of stupid things. So anyway, we're at the dance. We're wearing party hats. We're waltzing. O'Brien comes in to fix the power coupling that does not need replacing, and they figure out, of course, it's just a ruse to go play with Bashir. So O'Brien and Bashir go play darts. Bashir teases O'Brien about being uncomplicated. We all have that friend, right? Mike, who's your uncomplicated friend?
I know exactly who that person is. I'm not gonna say on the internet, but oh my God, this is terrible. At times I refer to him as, I have in the past referred to him as like my Lenny, right? Just because, and not because
Lenny!
Just because his energy, I somehow am able to like oil and water it and bring him down to like normal level. Like this dude is brings a lot of chaos and energy to a situation, and I'm able to sort of level him out. So that's why. But yeah. Now,
give him the bunny.
I should say, said person has gone on to a career much more successful and accolades much higher than my own. So there's no actual measure of his mental or emotional capabilities in any way.
To be fair, not a high bar, but yes.
Very fair. Very fair. Very fair.
So later, Bashir tells the team that Starfleet liked their analysis and is going to give them access to all the classified information.
Seems a leap. Yeah,
that there is a wormhole for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, the button.
I mean, yeah, they're smart. Yeah, they're whatever. It's a big. I mean, look, we're handing out classified information to all sorts of people who shouldn't have it today, but I don't see Starfleet in the middle of a gigantic war threatening their entire existence being real quick with just like, oh, here's all of the classified information.
Yeah, you're right.
But they do anyway, and our heroes have bad news. They declare that Starfleet has no chance and must surrender. So in Act 4, a crushed Bashir now firmly believes their analysis is correct, and he goes to Cisco to try to, and tells Cisco they have no chance. He says, if we fight, we'll take over 9 billion casualties. If we surrender, no one dies. Either way, we're in for 5 generations of Dominion rule. The good news is eventually the rebellion will form, centered on Earth, it'll start to spread, and within another generation, it'll succeed in overthrowing the Dominion. The Alpha Quadrant will unite in a new, stronger federation that'll last thousands of years. Since we can't win, why not surrender and save as many lives as we can? Cisco, not having it.
Yeah, tough. That's
Says,
a tough one.
surrender is not an option. I'm happy to hear your group's advice on how to win this war. I don't need advice on how to lose it. But there's no way we can win, sir. I don't care if the odds are against us. If we lose, we're going down fighting. That way, when our descendants rise up against the Dominion someday, they'll know what they're made of. Sir, if you don't add your voice to this, they'll reject it out of hand. I'm counting on it.
Badass.
And Bashir, so we'll go down fighting. How terribly courageous of us. I get both of their points here. I mean, if they're both certain. Bashir is then frustrated to find out that O'Brien agrees with Cisco. And O'Brien says, you're acting like no one with half a brain could possibly disagree with you. Frankly, I don't understand how you can. And O'Brien says, the way I see it, there are two possible explanations. Either I'm more feeble-minded than you ever realized, or you're not as smart as you think you are. Sometimes we need a friend to say that.
Hi. No.
Speaking of friends,
You want to say hi?
Jen, I promise I didn't text you about Mike.
Hi, bud. We got Cadet Ellie. Can't see her on
Hey,
camera.
Ellie.
Cadet Ellie's here.
Hi, Jen and Ellie. Oh.
Hi, Bubby. We've had some technical difficulties today, so we're still rocking and rolling. Did you guys go to the park or something?
We're gonna go now.
Okay, I'll see you a little later.
Okay.
Bye, honey.
Bye.
Fun. Bye, Chancellor.
Yeah,
Bye,
I mean,
Cadet.
this says something about humans, right? I'm not taking this position. I'm just stating it. Is that we have this thing in us, right? That tells us, many of us, I should say, that dying for something is worth more than less dying for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's sort of Cisco's point. Now, I'm not saying that that is objectively true, but it is surely a sentiment that has vindicated many a war.
Yeah. I mean, the dying for a cause is a really interesting piece of human existence. In fact, it is one of the things that is uniquely human.
Right? Because evolution does not work that way.
No. And so, dying for something greater than yourself is, extending beyond the family is unique to humanity, right? Because plenty of, animals would die to protect their family, but not like to protect an ism.
Well, here you go, right? If you look at the human species as one, right? Why would we kill ourselves in these wars over things that don't matter, right? If we were to know, Keith, if there happened to be a projection that was to say the American experiment, right, of 200 some years was to fail, right?
Oh, what kind of person would project that? That's absurd.
Let's say, then was all the death during the revolution worth it? Was the Civil War of just millions of people dying worth it if ultimately that experiment was to fail?
Or does that mean we should now
just concede,
sacrifice ourselves to try to save it?
Yeah, become join up with Poot.
And I
Pooty.
think you could make a pretty good argument that it's worth it in all of those cases. And also it's interesting. It
Gall
is an interesting
Putin. We should just join up with Gall Putin.
Yeah, well, Gull Putin. Yeah, Leggett, I think, was Putin. Anyway, so then a miserable and probably drunken Bashir tries to prove you can't beat the house at the
Dude, Quark
Dabo
in this
table.
scene is chef's kiss, Quark. He's like, shut the up.
He then tells the Brainiacs that Starfleet rejected their recommendations. Jack, of course, wants to take matters into their own hands and trigger an invasion themselves. This is where Bashir draws the line. He says, I won't be party to treason. Call it what you want. I'm willing to do it if it means saving billions of lives. And then he punches Bashir out, which I guess the two threats of violence were setting this up. Why he would punch Bashir out, but I don't think it was necessary.
It doesn't say anything.
Because if he truly believes what he's saying, it is the logical thing to do. So in Act 5, Damar and Wei Yun are frustrated because Cisco is stalling and Damar is impatient. Says, I appreciate the faith you've shown in me, and Wei Yun says, then show a little faith in me. Don't be like your predecessor, second-guessing my every move. It should be clear to you by now that no one is irreplaceable. Wei Yun also got a message from the Brainiacs to meet him in a different cargo bay for important information. Meanwhile, Bashir wakes up, and only Serena is there. And here is where he said, we're going to save some money. Nuh-uh, because here is a cutscene. And Bashir says, untie me, please, Serena. And Serena says out loud, I'm sorry I can't untie you. Yes, you can, if you think it's the right thing to do. I don't know. I think you do. I think that's why you spoke to me just now. You could have stayed quiet, but you didn't. The only reason I can think of it is you don't want to have the deaths of so many people on your hands.
Why did they cut that scene?
Jack would be mad. Yes, he would. And I know you don't want that to happen. They cut the scene, I think, both for time, but also I think it changes Serena's story.
Well, it's sort of like yeah, you're right. I mean, I kept thinking it was Schrodinger's mute, right? Like I thought we were waiting for her to speak when it was going to save the day, which I guess is exactly what this scene is.
Which is exactly what this scene is, yeah. It's going to pay off them not having her talk.
You think?
Eventually.
Well, at least, I mean, the important thing is that she got paid. She had lines.
She got paid.
Yeah, so that's the important thing.
She got paid. Okay, let's hear it.
One of two wormholes. You choose.
Okay.
Either one.
Choose your own wormhole.
I mean, we were led to believe that in addition to intellect, he also was given some, like, dexterity. Like, either he should have been able to get out of this tie, or they should have done a better job securing him.
Well, yes. That does not look like I think I could probably break out of some masking tape. Even my genetically, whatever the opposite of enhanced would be.
That's a bad job.
But we don't know. We don't know if that, like, it's space masking tape.
Yeah.
And we know Jack, also genetically enhanced. He's very smart.
It's also like it wasn't that they were pressed for time. I mean, stick him in a shaft somewhere or whatnot. You really want to... Maybe they wanted to get caught, Keith. I don't know.
I don't know. This subtext. Who knows? Who knows? So back in the episode proper, Bashir realizes that Serena is in love with Jack and uses that to get himself untied. He then immediately catches the three of them on their way through the station.
Not a great plot.
I also, like, maybe security would want to be involved in, like,
well, it is. He goes to Odo.
He does go to Odo, but I feel like I would have had more than just Bashir there to shut them down.
Well, it's not like they have much. Their danger. Now,
they just knocked him out.
Also, like, okay, if you really want it, hold on. We really want to explore it. They're geniuses, right?
Right.
They have made the decision that it's best for the trillions to give this information to the baddies, right?
Right.
Why do we have to have a clandestine meeting? Just, like, beam it over to them. Send them an email. Like, why do we have to go through the whole rigmarole of a secret meeting in an airlock? Like, none of that is emotionally intelligent.
What you're saying is this could have been an email?
Yeah. Yes. This evil plot could have been an email.
Could have been an email. We didn't need to have a meeting, okay? I didn't need to come to work. Fair.
Which I guess is, like, tangential to Bashir's revelation, right? Why didn't you know that she was going to give you up? Why didn't you factor that? Why didn't you I mean, they don't even make it around the corner, right?
Well,
for all these projections, they don't even make it around the corner.
Yes, and we know these people are in an institution because they're not able to function normally in society. So they have as many superpowers as they have, they also may have as many blind spots, which is causing them not necessarily to think through these things. I don't know. I certainly know I have more liabilities than I do superpowers. Which caused me to do stupid things that people don't expect.
And I think that's why, ultimately, and this is not, I don't want to get on too much of a tangent about it, because, like I said, it's not, is the big failing here is that it's a much more interesting story if it's a Keith whose neurodivergence doesn't read as big as the universe, right? To make it almost stock.
Mm-hmm.
Thus neutering the point, but 97, you know what I mean? It can't.
Yeah.
If they had been that subtle, then what are we even doing here?
97, it's sci-fi, it's all.
Why are there three of them? And it's really just his story.
Yeah. Without they all contribute, and well, except for the femme fatale, she's just sort of there. But anyway,
she's just Mirakira.
She's Mirakira. All right, as we continue, so they. And of course, Odo catches Wei-Yun and Damar waiting for the info. They lie badly, saying they got lost. Funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
Later in the cargo bay dorms, Bashir tells them that Cisco is not pressing charges. Hit the wormhole. Because they just attempted galactic treason?
Mm-hmm. Usually you have to get elected president for us to forget about the toilet documents.
That's right. That you have to be president to get away with treason. I don't imagine they would. So, anyway, I mean, that's an obvious, maybe we should have taken all of this a lot more seriously considering the stakes of this.
You mean
I know that's not
we
the
shouldn't
story
have given them full top security clearances?
Yeah, and then when they immediately tried to give it to Putin, we're like, no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
So Bashir says, maybe our projections were wrong. And Jack says, how can you say that? We factored in every variable, every contingency. The equations don't lie. Well, what do you make of this, Jack? Why didn't you factor Serena into your equations? You thought you knew everything, but you didn't even know what was going to happen in this room. One person derailed your plans. One person changed the course of history. I don't know about you, but that gives me hope. It makes me think that maybe, just maybe, things don't have to turn out the way we thought. Which I think is getting to the bigger picture here, that, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen, and that individuals and individual acts can have much bigger consequences than you think.
It's the next line that I think it's a little bit later. Is this right before they beam away?
No. We're gonna have a quick scene between it. So later in Quarks, O'Brien tries to cheer Bashir up, and he says, "We actually thought we were so smart. We actually believed we could predict the future. It's my fault, not theirs. I should never have let things go so far. I guess I was just too bent on proving to the world they have something to contribute." And O'Brien says, "They did contribute, Julian. Seems to me we were starting to get a little too complacent about the Dominion. We may have driven them back to Cardassian space, but that doesn't mean we've beaten them." Bashir then goes back to the Dabo table and wins this time. The House sometimes loses. Then we say goodbye to our brainiacs who are going back to the institution. But they're going to keep working on a way to beat the Dominion. So what was the line you...
That. It was his, will you come see us if we find a way? And you know what it made me instantly think about was when you have these trials, right? And you have these expert witnesses, right? These forensic pathologists who spent their whole lives being scientists and studying the body decomposition and blood splatter and blah, 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 blah. Not that I'm discounting any of their work, right? But interesting, right? Not but 20 minutes ago, we were certain of the outcome of the war and must do the following. But now, once there's somewhat incentivized that we find an outcome that is positive for us, that we beat the Dominion. Oh, now we're seeking that out, which is exactly what happens in a lot of these high-priced trials, right? Well, I'm taking your findings But we would like you to have those findings read a little bit pro the defense, or vice versa. And it just shows that even the most smart, like, that is where his danger is, right? His danger isn't all of the malevolent, the neck and the punch and all that. It's that at the very end there, he's like, oh, wait, I get a visitor if I can make my projections end up being positive for us? Cool. I don't know. It stuck out to me. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
But
it's a throwaway. It's a throwaway.
He didn't ask for a projection. He asked for a solution.
Yeah, I guess, yes. I know what they're trying to say. I found a chuckle in it.
Yeah, well, there you go.
We're all hypocrites, man. It's all hypocrites.
Let's find the chuckle in the AlamarEmmys.
It's right there, baby. It's the whole way through.
Okay. Well, we had a lot of wormholes. What do we have for a best moment?
Oh, Sembolts. Everything's just fired away right here. I don't even know why.
Oh, boy. It's like we're on fire.
How do I get that to go away?
There it is. Hey, you did it.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in here. I think the best moment for me, really, unfortunately, is when they use their emotional superpowers to sniff out the O'Brien beat. Something that has really been earned, right? I don't know. It just was kind of really beautiful to me that he would not just miss his buddy, that Keiko was out of town, but that he would like invent a whole ruse of having to go in there and fix the coupling to just hang out.
Wants to play Xbox.
Yeah. I don't know. I found it really beautiful, and I found them finding it out beautiful, but also Bashir's non-judgmental, non-snarky acceptance of it to be pretty beautiful. I don't know why that struck me, but I guess I found it to be the most uncomplicated, beautiful beat of the episode for myself.
Well, uncomplicated is O'Brien's word this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I actually really like Bashir and Cisco's interaction when Bashir tries to say we have to surrender, because I think they are both certain of their position. They both are making rational points, and we have this, I think, real emotional moment there where it's very honest. And I think it shows like a level of conflict between the two of them based on ideas, not on like personal failings. Their ideas are in conflict, not necessarily each other. But there's an intensity to it that I really like. Scenes of conflict that are based on both sides having really good points, and just conflict coming out of their certainty of their points, even though they're working towards the same thing. And I thought Avery did a tremendous job. It's not a long scene, and he doesn't get a chance to chew the scenery, but he really does, I think, emotionally inhabit that well, as does Alex Siddick. Having to carry the weight of like knowing something that nobody else does, and nobody's listening to me. I think we're all sort of feeling various flavors of that. I think, in a lot of ways, not to get too meta, right? We're looking at our future in this country, in the States, right? Where I sort of bounce back and forth between their 2 points of view in this scene every other day. Some days I'm Bashir. Man, we are so screwed. We need to kiss our asses goodbye and start, prepping the bunker in the basement. And then I'm Cisco. We've got to fight the good fight. We don't know what's going to happen. We've got to stand up for
long arm of history.
Long arm of history. One man, one person can make a big difference in this. We've, I'd rather go down fighting than hiding in my basement, and then I'm back to Bashir, and then I'm back. And I think that it speaks to a lot of times in history, but right now it feels like very prescient. It feels very much where we're at. And so it feels hopeless, but we don't know what's going to happen. So that's my best scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's do stem bolts. I'm curious where you're going to come down.
Hell yeah, they are self-sealing. Here are some stem bolts for you.
I think at first I want to call out that even with a critical lens, you know, interestingly, recently I've revisited both Awakenings and Rain Man, and I thought I was going to cringe my ass off on both those experiences, but it turns out that I did not. In that, now I'm setting aside the argument of who should be playing certain roles, right? That's a whole different thing. But I do think that in both of those scenarios, De Niro and
yeah, well, screw him anyway.
Yeah, give really empathetic, researched roles or performances that do not and end up, and the writing I think is as such, do not feel cringe.
Right.
Very easily, I think the Jack role could have felt cringy in its execution, and I did not feel that way actually. Even as kind of stock as it was, I felt it to not be offensive. Now, I can't speak for everyone. That's just how I viewed it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to commend that. The other two, they just aren't impactful enough that it really matters. You know, like here's where I come down. There's some really cool stuff in this episode. I like the sci-fi exploration of, like, what if we can investigate a crime scene through holodeck and, like, spin it and change the language and do all this kind of cool stuff. I love that stuff in video games. I thought it was really cool to see it played out here. I was kind of expecting it to be more about that. I thought we could have a whole episode of this, like, intense summit, and then you have this, like,
figuring out
this ragtag group of investigators in the other room. I thought that's actually what this was going to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead, I think it's more about Bashir's journey through them with O'Brien and Cisco and him. You know, it deals with, like we talked about, the math, the imperfect math, what the one person, a little bit of nihilism, a little bit of patriotism, it had a little bit of everything. My biggest issue is I just don't think it was confident in what it was trying to say. At least that's the way I end up. I just ended up muddy, and let me tell you, I've been thinking about it since last night. I just can't. Ultimately, I thought it was going to be about neurodivergence and about how they're being wronged and have something, a deeper kind of...
Have like a civil rights bent to it.
Yeah, just like a deeper reckoning with that.
Yeah.
But instead, it's not that. I mean, it's just like, okay, yes, you did all this, you're forgiven, but you're going back, and it's sort of like one of those, what do they call it, the status quos. It's like we kick up some dust, but then it settles, and we don't really deal with any of the problems. I think they talk about them a lot. I thought that all of the mulling about the situation, in the very beginning when they're all sitting down having tea and talking about it, O'Brien in the bar, even Bashir with Quark both those times, all of the times we just are when we're sitting and just talking about it, were really effective, and I like episodes like that. But all the adventure and the plotting outside of that just didn't seem to have a lot of weight. I will say one thing we didn't mention: the kind of reset of the table of the Cardassians and a little insight into that. Now Wayun has a little more, because at least Dukat had a little defiance to him, whereas it seems like
and I think the Dominion was more willing to pretend to like give Dukat some of the dignity of at least pretending he had agency, where they've given that up with Damar.
So I think all of the individual pieces of this episode, there's good stuff. It's just the meal did not coalesce into a combination of flavors I enjoyed. There's a couple good bites here and there. You know what I mean? I liked the decor, but ultimately I was left unsatisfied, Keith. And I don't know if that's my problem or the episode's problem, to be honest. And I don't even think our 45-hour conversation about it has really clarified that for me. But ultimately, I'm left in a season of highs I don't think it was bad, but I'm not going to give it higher than 78 self-sealing templates. That feels high to me still. 76 self-sealing templates. Where was I last week?
Last week you were 62.
Okay, I think 76 feels good to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is an episode that I remember fondly. I've always liked this episode. I think more about the ideas than necessarily the execution of them. Because, like, you know, this episode spurred, I think, a very interesting conversation. And kicked off a whole bunch of different ideas. I think it maybe has too many ideas. And I think we have pitched like 3 or 4 good episodes they could have focused on. You know, let's do a civil rights episode on how we're treating these people. Let's do an episode dissecting these, the one you pitched, where we're watching these negotiations, and let's use these team of differently abled folks to navigate that. That's a great episode. You know, I think the episode about like reinforcing that we are very much the underdog in this conflict, and what do we do about it? I think that's a great episode, and I love the idea of doing the math and realize like, oh, we are toast. What is the ethical, you know, like if we were absolutely certain, which Bashir was, that we are going to lose this, which I think is every war reaches a conclusion where one side is going to lose, and how do you finish the war when somebody is going to lose, right? When does the surrender happen? When does and how do you sit, because at the beginning or at the end of every war, the losing side, somebody sits around and figures out, how do we end this? We know we're toast. How do we end this? Right? That's a really interesting discussion.
You know, hold on. That is an interesting... Sorry, because what was their answer, right? They're basing that on losing equals more people died, right?
Right.
But that's very zero-sum. Because statistically, 1 trillion people dying versus 85 billion people dying is big, but also that's a ton of dying. So...
Well, I think the negotiation was, we are going to lose either way. We can lose the hard way and have 9 billion people die, or lose the easy way and have nobody die.
It wasn't nobody die. It wasn't nobody die. It was a lot less people die. Because under Dominion rule, a lot of people died still.
Well, right. Right. No, exactly. And that is the, you know, and Sisko's point, do we go down swinging? Is it the end of World War I where you had that one commander is like, even though the armistice has been signed, we're going to go down swinging. We're going to get all these people killed in one final battle, right?
I think that is one of the things that separates us as humans, right? Because we were talking about earlier, you know, cultures. The thing that separates it is we base those successes and losses. There isn't one set of rules, right? I think one part of culture that really creates this conflict is ethics, right?
Right.
And Starfleet, for all their failings, as we've come to see, at least has a relatively set of ethics. And I think that's what's called into question here successfully. In fact, I talked about it earlier. It was Scotty B wrote in, you know, talking about how really their projections are taking Starfleet ethics out of the equation, right? And once you do that and look at things as zero sum mathematically,
they are taking Starfleet ethics and saying that all these projections are based on Starfleet not dropping the dirty bomb or whatever. And so, I mean, honestly, I like this episode because it stirs up all of these ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like,
it definitely gets high points for that. I don't know that it's satisfyingly...
I could keep going for another hour on all the specifics of it, and like, you know, getting into like smaller personal stuff, right? If I see somebody vulnerable being attacked by 5 guys and it's a kid or it's a trans person or somebody who deserves to be defended, I do the math. I am going to lose this fight. I am going to get my ass kicked if I involve myself here. That hits my ethics. Do I go down swinging just so that person feels not alone? We're both gonna lose. Those guys are gonna do whatever the hell they want. We're both gonna lose, but at least that person feels like somebody is trying to stick up for them. It's like, who knows?
I mean, I agree with you, but we've often criticized when we pitch better plots for an episode based on the ideas used.
Yeah.
And how much credit we want to give the writers in the episode for the execution, right? You and I could talk for 3 hours about friggin' anything. So
True.
The score comes down to how much of that is our conversation versus what they wanted us to. Was that the point? You know, and I'm not saying it isn't that. I'm just.
No, I think that's fair, which is why it's not going to be a great episode for me. But I do think it's good. I also appreciate, whether intentional or not, getting some of the details of neurodivergence accurate, at least for some of us. I thought that was great. So at the end of the day, for me, it gets an 81.
Okay.
I think it's a very solid B. It's not an A, but it's not a C for me because it's interesting.
I feel like this is maybe the wokest thing I've ever said. I would have appreciated maybe if they'd flopped the roles a little bit and let her be the mastermind of the plots and such. Because she felt like she just played the femme fatale, sexy sex lady.
Yeah.
It would have been nicer to have her be Jack, because I think that would have at least mixed it up a little bit. But
100%. I would have liked that too. All right, folks. Well, thank you for sticking with us through thick and thick.
You know what I'm going to guess, Keith? It's still going to be we always, with our cuts and the crap that happens during the episodes, it always feels like it's going to be a 3-hour podcast. But it's 136 at the end of the day. It's always 136.
This is going to be longer than 136.
Yeah,
but it is
not much.
It is remarkable doing the time codes, how often we're within like 10 seconds of our segment times. Well, we're nothing if not inconsistent. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. So, out there in the world, this was a 7.5, which was 88 out of 173, right down the middle. But next week, we are doing the magnificent Ferengi.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. All right, thank you so much. We'll see you back next week. Join our Patreon, patreon.com. Whatever, we're tired. Bye! Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.
I think, just giving the air of caring really is as good. It's almost as good as fixing the problem.
Almost.
Keith, did you get new chairs behind you and a plant?
I did. Well, I got, new recline, because the couch that I bought from Raymore and Flanagan, folks, in less than 3 years, my, albeit not exactly tiny self, basically turned that couch into like a twisted pile of metal and toothpicks. Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna put that on my Bumble profile.
Yeah.
Like up to but not inclusive of 100 pounds.
Or you have to sit on the floor.
Well, because the other chair is for my ex-wife.
Trust me, that's the most normal part of the whole situation.
She's 100% cool with it, I promise.
If you were coming for Deep Space Nine content, you came to the wrong show, it turns out.